I hadn't been back to my family cabin since I was a kid. It felt strange returning to a place that I remembered with both warmth and dread. The house creaked under my weight. Everything seemed so familiar, and yet so foreign. I never stopped thinking about it. I set up my equipment in the living room. The light flickered a bit. I figured it was just old wiring. I stepped outside for some fresh air. As I walked onto the porch, I noticed the old rocking chair was moving. It hadn't been windy, but the chair was swaying. My heart raced, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was just a trick of my memory. As nights went by, I began to see more strange things. I found photos scattered around the cabin. They were of me and my childhood friends playing in the woods. But they weren't just pictures. They felt wrong. In almost every one, I saw shadows lurking in the background. I squinted at the prints and tried to remember taking them. I couldn't. On the third night back, I felt restless. I heard giggles echoing from the barn behind the house. It was a sound I recognized, a childhood laughter that used to fill the woods. But I was alone. My stomach twisted. I never played in that barn. I always avoided it. Late that night, I tossed and turned in bed. The creaking sounds of the house were unnerving, but so were the memories from my childhood. Faces darted around in my mind, things I couldn't quite recall. I remembered once seeing something in the barn, something that sent me running home in tears. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling. I decided to investigate further. Stepping into the barn filled me with dread. The air was thick. I noticed an old chest in the corner covered in dust. I approached it, my heart racing. The lid creaked as I opened it. Inside were trinkets, some toys, photographs and things I'd forgotten long ago. But there were also letters with frantic writing. They spoke of dark whispers in the woods. I felt cold. Maybe these were just remnants of my imagination, but I knew better. As I turned to leave, I heard those giggles again. They were clearer this time. I thought they were just outside the barn door. I took a deep breath and stepped outside. Then I saw them, shadows darting between the trees. They laughed and stared at me. My heart sank as I stumbled back. I called out, "Is anyone there?" Nobody answered. The shadows moved closer, and the laughter twisted into something darker. I didn't know what to do. I stood frozen, feeling a knot in my stomach. I wanted to run, but couldn't take my eyes off the figures. They were just kids, but I felt a chill. They weren't right. I backed away slowly, feeling the ground beneath me shift. Then everything went silent. All I heard was my heartbeat in my ears. I turned to run, and as I did, I knew I wouldn't return to this place again. I spent the next day in a haze. I felt both exhausted and restless. I couldn't shake the image of those shadows lurking outside the barn. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown. It was the familiarity of it that unsettled me. Those giggles replayed in my mind, echoing like a haunting lullaby. I decided to distract myself. I pulled out my old camera and went for a walk in the woods. Maybe if I caught some beautiful shots, I could forget what happened. The tall trees stood like sentinels, blocking the sun and casting long shadows that felt alive. Every snap of the shutter felt like a way to reassure myself all was well. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something wasn't right here. After a couple of hours, I made my way back to the cabin, feeling more vulnerable than before. The cabin loomed ahead, its dark windows staring at me like empty eyes. I wanted to hide, but curiosity pushed me back inside. I went straight to the living room, but instead of settling, I opened the chest I'd found in the barn. I sifted through the toys and letters again, desperate for answers. The frantic writing felt like it was pleading with me, but I still couldn't figure out what it wanted. As I rummaged through the contents, one of the letters slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. I instinctively reached down to pick it up. That's when I saw what it was lying next to. A small, worn-out teddy bear, its button eyes gleaming eerily in the dim light. I picked it up, feeling an overwhelming sense of nostalgia wash over me. I had played with this bear back when everything was innocent. But as I turned it over, I noticed something scrawled on its paw. A name. Charlie. The name didn't just ring a bell, it echoed with dread. Charlie was a friend I had lost in those woods. A game gone wrong, or so I thought. My memories were foggy, but I vividly recalled that day, the way the laughter had turned into scared screams. Charlie never came back. I dropped the bear, and it hit the floor with a dull thud. Just then my phone buzzed with a notification. I froze as I read the message. It was from an old classmate, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. The message simply read, "I heard you were back at the cabin. Be careful." My heart raced. Why would she say that? That was when I heard it again, the soft giggling. But this time it was right outside my door. I felt dread cinch around my chest like a vice. I edged closer to the window, a quiet movement so I wouldn't startle whatever was out there. I peered out but saw nothing. Just the trees swaying, shadows twisting and turning. I almost convinced myself it was my imagination. Then, a whisper echoed through the air, sharp and clear. "Come play with us." I bolted to the back of the cabin, ready to flee, my mind racing with thoughts of Charlie and the shadows. I had to leave. But a more insistent part of me wanted to confront whatever was out there. This wasn't just about me anymore. Suddenly, the back door swung open with a loud creak, and I knew I had to decide fast. Stay or run. I stood frozen in the cabin's dim light, my heart thumping in my chest. The open door beckoned like a dark maw. I felt pulled in two directions. Fear urged me to escape, while curiosity rooted me in place. The giggles continued, soft and inviting. They felt familiar, yet twisted. "Come play with us." I took a shaky breath. Was it really Charlie calling me, or something more sinister? With hesitation, I stepped towards the back door. Then I noticed something moving in the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but it was just the wind rustling the trees outside. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last long. I stepped outside, driven by a mix of dread and determination. The woods loomed around me, dark and foreboding. I focused on the laughter, trying to pinpoint its source. I wandered deeper, moving cautiously. Every snap of a twig echoed around me, and I jumped at every sound. I scanned the shadows, searching for anything. That's when I saw it. A flash of white darting between the trees. I squinted, trying to see more clearly. It was a figure, fleeting, but real. Just a trick of the light, or something else. There it was again. It looked like a child, but how could that be? There hadn't been kids around here in years. "Charlie?" I called out hesitantly. Nothing but silence answered me. The laughter stopped, replaced by an eerie calm. I took another step forward, my instincts warning me to turn back, but my curiosity propelled me ahead. As I pushed deeper into the woods, the weight of the air shifted. A chill crawled up my spine. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my focus. I glanced down to see another message from my classmate. "You have to leave. They won't stop until you do." My heart sank. It was like being pulled apart. I didn't understand any of this. I needed answers, yet every inch I moved further into the woods felt like a step toward danger. I turned to head back to the cabin, but then I heard it, a rustling sound right behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering. The air was heavy, and it felt like something was watching me. Shadows danced between the trees, shapes circling just out of view. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice shaking. "If this is a joke, it's not funny." Silence. The giggles returned, now mocking, and I felt rage bubble up inside me. "Show yourself." Suddenly the laughter erupted louder, echoing in a chorus. The light filtered through the leaves, but shadows twisted, forming twisted faces that taunted me. I stumbled back, ready to flee. Whatever was in those woods, it was smarter than I was. Then, through the chaos, I caught a glimpse of one more thing, a child standing at the edge of the clearing. I squinted, trying to make out their features. They raised a hand and waved, as if inviting me over. A jolt of fear coursed through me. I had to know the truth about Charlie. With one last breath, I took a step towards the child. That's when everything went dark. I blinked, disoriented. The darkness enveloped me like a thick fog. It took a moment to process what had just happened. I felt the cold ground beneath me, and the sounds of laughter faded into an unsettling silence. Panic surged through me. Where was I? I sat up slowly, my eyes struggling to adjust. When they did, I found myself in a small hollow surrounded by trees that were twisted and gnarled. They loomed over me like sentinels, their branches reaching out as if to snatch me away. I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the cold bark around me. No answer. Just the rustle of leaves whispering secrets I didn't want to understand. I got to my feet, scanning the area for any sign of the child or those strange shapes I had seen. But I was alone here, in this unexpected clearing. I felt a wave of frustration. I needed to find Charlie. There had to be a reason I was drawn out here. As I ventured forward, the silence grew oppressive. With every step, it felt like the trees were closing in around me. The path was unclear, littered with fallen branches and underbrush that snagged at my shoes. I pushed through, determined. A sudden movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see a flash of white darting behind a massive oak. My heart raced. "Charlie, is that you?" I took off in the direction I had seen the figure go. The laughter rang out again, but it felt different this time, deeper, more sinister, like a warning. "Stay away," it seemed to say, but I was too far gone to listen. I burst into a small clearing, and there, sprawled across the ground, was something I couldn't quite comprehend. Scattered toys, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, teddy bears with one eye missing, and books with tattered pages. It looked like a forgotten playroom from a distant time. "Why would you?" I trailed off, a chill climbing up my spine. It felt wrong, so wrong. My hands shook as I reached for a doll, its glassy stare sending another wave of dread through me. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, surrounding me, echoing like a curse. "Play with us." I dropped the doll and stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest. The laughter was no longer playful, it felt like a taunt, like those unsettling voices were trying to lure me in deeper. I forced myself to turn away from the dolls. I had to leave this place. But as I turned, the air thickened, and shadows curled at the edges of my vision. I felt them there, lurking, pressing in like an unseen force, and I had an overwhelming sense that I was no longer alone. That's when I caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye again. I whirled around, but this time it wasn't just one figure. It was a dozen. Children, all of them, faces pale and hollow, watching me from behind the trees. Their eyes glowed with a strange light. With a primal scream lodged in my throat, I bolted, tearing through the dense underbrush. I could hear their laughter chasing after me, rising into a cacophony that drowned out the sound of my own breath. I had to escape. As I ran, roots snagged my feet and I stumbled, falling hard to the ground. I twisted back to look, and that was when I saw it. A child among them stepping forward, their hand outstretched like the one I had seen before. Then I realized they were closer than I thought. I had no idea what awaited me. I scrambled to my feet, my pulse racing. The children surrounded me now, their ghostly forms weaving in and out of the shadows. I wanted to scream again, but the sound caught in my throat. I had to think. I had to find a way out. "Charlie!" I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. "Where are you?" No response came, just their haunting laughter echoing through the trees. I turned around, trying to find the path I had come from, but everything looked the same. Just beyond the circle of children, I spotted a narrow trail that seemed to lead deeper into the woods. It felt like a gamble, but I had to take the risk. I darted toward the path, determined to escape the laughter that was now a menacing chorus ringing in my ears. As I moved swiftly, I caught glimpses of the doll, the toys. Their cracked faces seemed to follow me, judging and mocking. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind. I needed to focus on finding Charlie. The path twisted like a serpent, and I could feel the air growing colder. I gasped as I stumbled upon an old wooden swing hanging from a sturdy tree branch. It swayed slightly, as if someone had just gotten off. My heart lurched. I stepped closer, hoping desperately that this would somehow lead me to Charlie. Suddenly, from behind the swing, a shadow moved. I froze, holding my breath. Was it another child? I squinted, trying to make out the figure, but all I saw was a blur darting back into the thick underbrush. "Charlie!" I called again, but this time there was no answer. I was met with only silence, the soft rustling of branches like the whisper of ghosts. Fear filled the pit of my stomach, but I knew I couldn't give up. I remembered the laughter, how it had called me back in the clearing. "What do you want?" I yelled into the thickening darkness, hoping for a response. Then it hit me. What if they wanted Charlie? The thought made panic wash over me. I took off running again, intent on finding him before they did. My feet pounded against the earth as I followed the narrow trail, heart racing in my chest. I felt their presence close behind me. The laughter rose, a twisted melody that wrapped around me, and I pushed harder, dodging tree branches that reached out like fingers. I couldn't look back. I needed to get away. Then I burst into another clearing. My breath caught in my throat. In the middle stood an old, rusted merry-go-round covered in moss. It was eerie and out of place in this dim landscape. I glanced around, but there was still no sign of Charlie. As I approached the merry-go-round, I noticed something glimmering in the moonlight. It was a simple silver locket lying in the grass beside it. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It was familiar. I opened it, revealing a picture of Charlie, smiling. A warmth spread through me, but something felt wrong. Then I heard their laughter again, louder now. It was less playful and more sinister. "Find him," they echoed. "Find him before it's too late." The warning sent chills down my spine. Before I could think, I spun around. I needed to get moving. I took a deep breath and dashed toward what I hoped was the way out, knowing the eyes of the children were on me, watching, waiting. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet as I sprinted away from the merry-go-round. I felt their laughter following me, a chilling echo that kept time with my racing heart. I stumbled through the brush, branches clawing at my skin, but I ignored the pain. Charlie needed me. I had to find him. The path began to narrow, winding deeper into shadows. Every few feet, I turned to check if the children were still chasing me, but each time I looked back, the woods appeared empty, their laughter only a whisper now. I tried to convince myself the worst was behind me, but there was an unshakable feeling of dread resting heavy in my chest. Then I saw it. A flicker of light through the trees. I rushed toward it, hoping it would lead me to Charlie. As I neared, the light grew brighter, casting an eerie glow against the dark, tangled underbrush. I pushed through the last of the branches and stumbled into a small clearing. What I found made my heart drop. In the center was a circle of rocks, each one etched with strange symbols I didn't recognize. In the middle of the circle sat a small bonfire, crackling softly, its flames dancing almost playfully. I could see shadows playing around the fire, but they weren't the children from before. These shadows were larger, shifting like they belonged to something far more sinister. I could feel their eyes on me. Panic surged as I stepped back, but ducking away wasn't an option. It felt like the woods were closing in around me. "Charlie?" My voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. There was no answer, just the shifting of dark forms. I took another step back and nearly stumbled over a wooden figure propped against a nearby tree. My heart raced. It was a crude carving of a boy holding a doll, painted in faded colors. It looked just like Charlie. No, this can't be happening. I stammered as I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold wood. Everything seemed to connect. The laughter, the figures, the symbols. They were showing me something, but I didn't want to see it. I pivoted away, desperate to flee the looming darkness, but the shadows around the fire seemed to grow closer, reaching out toward me. "Join us," they whispered in sweet, taunting voices. The flames flickered, illuminating their faces. They looked just like the children, but their eyes were dark voids, filled with malice. "Find him." They echoed again, and it sounded like an order more than a suggestion. Suddenly, the fire exploded into a burst of light, and I had to shield my eyes. When I opened them, I was no longer in the clearing. I had been transported to a long-abandoned playground. Rusted swings hung silently, while broken slides loomed ominously. At the center of it all, a massive tree with gnarled roots sprawled across the ground. And that's when I saw him. Charlie was sitting at the base of the tree, eyes closed as if he were sleeping. I rushed forward, but as I did, the ground began to tremble beneath me. Roots twisted around my ankles like snakes, pulling me back. "Charlie!" I screamed, struggling against the tightening grip. The laughter returned, louder and more menacing than ever. I could feel their presence creeping closer, hungry for fear. The forest around us felt alive, and I was trapped in their game. The last thing I saw before darkness engulfed me was Charlie's face, serene and calm, as if he were part of this horrific dream. Then everything went black. I gasped as I came to, my heart hammering against my ribs. The darkness faded slowly, revealing a dimly lit cave. The air was thick and heavy, the smell of damp earth and decay lingering all around me. I sat up and shook my head, trying to clear the fog. "Charlie?" I called out again, but my voice echoed softly, swallowed by the shadows. No answer. The panic rose again as I struggled to my feet. The walls of the cave shimmered in the faint glow of something just ahead. I stumbled toward the source of the light, fighting the feeling that every step was a mistake. On the ground, I noticed images etched into the stone walls, figures dancing in circles, faces frozen in twisted expressions. My skin crawled. What is this place? Just as I reached the light, I spotted a small tunnel branching off to the right. It was cramped, just wide enough for me to squeeze through. I hesitated, glancing back at the glowing light. Curiosity pushed me forward, so I crawled into the tunnel, dragging my hands along the damp walls. The tunnel twisted and turned, narrowing with every step until it opened into another small chamber. This one wasn't empty. At the edge of the room there stood a figure, back turned to me. My breath caught when I recognized the silhouette. "Charlie?" I stepped forward, my heart racing with hope, but he didn't turn around. Instead, he remained perfectly still, like a statue worn from age. Something was wrong. Suddenly a chill swept through the chamber, clawing at my spine. The shadows in the corners shifted, whispering. I shivered. "Charlie!" I cried, more urgent this time. "Please wake up!" He finally moved, turning slowly to face me. His eyes were open, but they were empty, devoid of life. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice flat. "They don't like visitors." I stumbled back, heart racing. "What do you mean? Who are they?" Before he could answer, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the light. Darkness enveloped us. I could hear the laughter again, louder and closer. "Join us!" a chorus sang from the shadows. I felt the ground beneath me start to quake again, the terrain shifting beneath my feet. I needed to get out. "Charlie, please," I begged, reaching for him, but he stepped away, fading into the shadows like vapor. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and the moment shattered into fragments of darkness. I was pulled back into the tunnel, flung against the cold cave wall. The laughter surged, drowning out all reasoning. They were closing in. Then, right in front of me, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, unnervingly bright against the black. I froze, trapped between flight and terror. "You're not alone anymore," it hissed, and even through the fear deep down, I felt the weirdest pull of recognition. In that moment, clarity hit, as if a light turned on inside me. I didn't know where I was or how I got here, but I had to fight. "I will find you, Charlie," I shouted defiantly into the void, but even I felt doubt creeping in. Then the eyes vanished, swallowed by darkness, and the laughter echoed one last time. A promise that this story was just beginning. I stumbled backward, the cave tunnel stretching endlessly behind me. My pulse raced with every sharp breath I took. I had to keep moving, to escape whatever was lurking in the dark. Fighting the urge to cry out in fear, I pressed my hands firmly against the damp stone wall for guidance. As I turned, I caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, the flicker of shadows shifting just beyond the reach of my vision. I clenched my fists. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice shaky but desperate. No answer came, only silence. I felt a prick of unease settle in my stomach. It was as if the cave itself was listening, waiting for me to make a mistake. I moved deeper into the tunnel, each step echoing loudly in the stillness. That's when I saw it, a small break in the wall up ahead. I could barely see it in the faint glow that seeped from somewhere in the cave. I approached it cautiously. The light felt warm, inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, damp air around me. I reached the opening and peered inside. It was another chamber, filled with strange artifacts littering the ground. Old, rusted tools, tarnished coins, and something small and glimmering caught my eye. I stepped inside, drawn by the promise of answers, or at the very least, something to ground me. As I bent down to inspect the shiny object, something made me freeze. It was a small mirror, oval-shaped, reflecting only the dim outline of my own face. My heart raced at the realization that this wasn't just any mirror. It felt out of place here, like a forgotten piece of a larger puzzle. Just as I picked it up, an icy breeze swept through the chamber, sending shivers down my spine. Suddenly the whispers returned, louder and more urgent than before. "Look closer," they urged, swirling all around me. I held the mirror up, my hands trembling. The whispers continued, a symphony of voices luring me deeper. "See the truth." I peered into the glass, and instead of my reflection, I saw Charlie. His expression twisted, eyes wide with fear. "Help me," he mouthed silently. My breath hitched in my throat. He was trapped here, somewhere in this cave. Panic surged through me. "Charlie," I shouted, desperation cracking my voice. "Where are you?" The mirror shook in my hand as shadows enveloped the edges of my vision. The laughter returned, mocking me, layered with urgency. "They're coming." I dropped the mirror, my survival instincts kicking in. I scrambled backward, hitting the wall with a dull thud. I had to escape this place. I turned and ran, ignoring the darkness wrapping around me, feeling the pull of unseen hands attempting to keep me inside their realm. Then I heard it, a voice, sharp and clear above the chaos. "You'll replace him." I skidded to a stop, breathless and trembling. Just as I turned to face this new threat, the ground beneath me shifted again, the tunnel threatening to close in on me. A small scratch of desperation clawed at my heart. I had to make my choice quickly, confront whatever this was or go deeper into the blackness. Whatever was lurking in the shadows was not finished with me yet. I stood there, frozen and unsure of what to do next. The voice whispered again, chilling my bones. "You'll replace him." It echoed against the stone, lingering in the air. I had no time to think, no time to weigh my options. I turned and ran blindly down the tunnel, heart pounding. The darkness closed in around me, tendrils creeping at the edges of my vision like fingers reaching out to pull me back. I stumbled over uneven ground, dodging jagged rocks that threatened to trip me. Where was Charlie? I couldn't leave him behind. Suddenly I spotted another flicker of light up ahead, a strange flickering glow that seemed to dance and throb in the distance. It felt alive, almost like a heartbeat calling out to me. I shifted my path and raced toward it, hoping it might lead me back to him. The closer I got, the more the shadows seemed to stretch and contort. It felt like they were shifting with anticipation, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. I reached the source of the light and found a small pool of water, its surface shimmering in the darkness. The glow came from something below, something buried in the mud. What if it was another mirror? I hesitated at the edge, peering into the water. My own face stared back at me. But behind that reflection I saw something else. Forms began to emerge, shapes swirling in the depths. I leaned closer, squinting to make sense of it. Figures writhed beneath the surface, faces I recognized but didn't want to. People from my past, family and friends, their expressions twisted in fear. The reflection became more frantic, the water bubbling as if something was trying to push its way out. "This isn't real," I whispered, shaking my head. I backed away, my heart racing. I didn't want to see them here, trapped in the cave like Charlie. I thought I could feel the despair pressing down on me, trying to drown me. I turned to flee again, but the whispers turned to screams. "Don't leave us! Don't leave him!" The voices were a cacophony, rising to a peak that made my ears throb. I was losing my grip on sanity. Each word felt like a physical tug, pulling me back toward the water. In a moment of sheer instinct, I scooped up a handful of gravel and tossed it into the pool. The water erupted in ripples, splashing violently as the shapes beneath writhed in chaos. The faces screamed, their mouths moving but no sound coming out. I staggered back, breathing hard as I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet. I realized with sudden clarity I had to keep moving. The tunnel was shifting again, perhaps pushing me to make a choice I wasn't ready to confront. Steeling myself, I forced my legs to move. I couldn't allow the shadows or the voices to grip me any longer. As I ran deeper into the cave, I caught another whisper, clear as day. "You must find the source." Confusion flooded my mind. What source? Was it Charlie? Was it the mirror? Or something else entirely? A sudden chill enveloped me, and I sensed a presence behind me. I turned just as something lunged from the darkness and everything went black. I opened my eyes, a sharp gasp escaping my lips as I sat up. I was back in the cabin, lying on the living room floor, the musty scent of the house overwhelming my senses. What had just happened? I blinked, struggling to orient myself. Memories of shadows and whispers skirled in my mind, but there was no trace of the cave or Charlie. Yet the air felt thick with something I couldn't explain. I pulled myself upright, shaking off the lingering fog of whatever that had been. I needed to clear my head, to breathe. I grabbed my camera from across the room. I had to document this. I needed proof of what I'd experienced, of what was still haunting me. Stepping outside, the cool breeze hit my face, awakening me fully. Instead of the familiar woods, the landscape appeared warped, twisted in the early light as if the shadows had begun to take form. Shivering, I aimed the camera at a cluster of trees, but the moment I pressed the shutter, the lens fogged over. I quickly wiped it, but found only fleeting figures in the trees behind me. I turned, heart racing, but there was nothing, just a blanket of early morning fog wrapping itself around the ground. I was losing it. I braced myself against the wall of the cabin, feeling the wood splinter beneath my fingers. Panic clawed at my throat, the laughter, the shadows, Charlie. I still didn't understand. As the first rays of dawn began to pierce through the canopy, I felt trapped again in an unsettling silence. Then, amidst the growing light, I heard it, a whispering echoing through the trees, echoing words that made my skin crawl. "Join us." The plea resonated with the bass of haunting familiarity wrapping around me. Then, silence fell like a curtain, the air heavy with an unshakable tension. My instincts screamed at me to get out of the cabin. I dashed inside to grab my things, ignoring anything unnecessary. I didn't want any ties to this place. The darkness inside the cabin seemed to cling to me as I bolted for the door, but just as I stepped onto the porch, I noticed a piece of paper fluttering near my feet. It was one of those letters from the chest in the barn, the ink smudged and frantic. I unfolded it, hands trembling, reading the last few lines. "The shadows come alive when you're alone. Don't let them take you. Find the light. Find your way back." Whatever that meant, it burned in my mind. I had to escape. Whatever was here didn't want me leaving. I glanced back at the cabin, at the shadows curling around it as if they were alive. Grabbing my camera, I sprinted down the path toward the road. I didn't look back. As I raced, adrenaline surged. I could almost hear the laughter surge behind me, summoning me back. But I pushed harder against it. I could see it up ahead, the old dirt road I had walked down years ago, freedom stretched out like a promise. Just before I reached the street, I stumbled, dropping my camera. It hit the ground with a thud, and I hesitated, fighting the impulse to retrieve it. What if I went back and... No. I shook my head vigorously, barely able to breathe. I took another step, then another, and I was free. But even as I ran, a pang of sorrow settled in my gut. I left behind shadows of friends and memories I dared not dwell on. I felt like I'd escaped some kind of trap, yet what had I truly discovered? What remained in those woods? As I finally emerged onto the main road, reality flooded back, the world alive and vibrant. I gasped in the fresh air and let the sun warm my face. But even as I pulled away, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching. For weeks I tried to return to normalcy, but the laughter haunted me, echoing at the edges of every memory. I realized that I couldn't quite understand the full nature of what occurred there. I still wondered about Charlie and those children. Were they real? Had I just imagined everything? And why had I heard that haunting whispering call my name? I moved to a different city after that, hoping it would drown out the echoes, but I still think about it sometimes. I glance at every wooded area with hesitation, and occasionally I catch myself waiting for a familiar giggle to rise from the shadows. I guess I'll never know whether I truly escaped.